G'day, mate. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Carolyn Swindell.
Carolyn Swindell. What do you do, Carolyn?
I'm a comedian, I'm also a writer, and I'm a podcaster. And then sometimes to pay the bills, I still do public relations.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Crowdworkcast. My name is Andrew Barnett. Thanks so much for joining me. Now, my guest today, Carolyn Swindell. This was a really fun chat because Carolyn started comedy a little bit later than most people start comedy, so it was good. I didn't fully know her backstory, her journey to get to comedy, and all the interesting stuff she'd been up to. So this was this was a really fun chat. So if you enjoy this, give Carolyn a follow. She is at Puffy C on all social media. It's odd name, but that's her handle at Puffy C. You'll find her. Also, she is a published author. She's got a novel out. You'll hear her talk a little bit about it. It's called We Only Want What's Best. So if you want to grab that on Kindle, please do leave reviews for her there because that helps with the whole Amazon thing. Now, if you want to come see me live, good news, Sydney, I'm going to be at Happy Endings Comedy Club on 17th of October. That's a Thursday night. I'm doing my show Barney Lives there. So it's going to be a fun time. So come along to that. Tickets are available. You can just hit the link in my bio on my social media at Andrew Barnett Comedy. If you're enjoying the podcast, please do like, subscribe, all that good sort of stuff. That's enough faffing for now, though. Let's just rip in. This is my episode with Carolyn Swindell.
Still do public
I
relations?
still do public relations, yeah.
Nice. So is that because how long have you been doing comedy for now?
I think I'm just almost at my 5th anniversary now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So 5 years. And then, but before that, it was all public relations?
Yeah, and writing. I was working on this novel that came out last year, but just forever, writing a book it's the opposite thing to what a comedian should be doing. Because if you've got the personality type of a comedian, you need the constant validation. So writing a book is just this isolating thing. So
it's so funny you say that. Every time I write anything, because I'll do a bit of writing for different things, different projects. But anytime I write something, I get to the end of what I've written that day, and I'm desperate to get feedback.
Someone to applaud.
I have no idea if this is good or not, and you're kind of like satisfied because it's done. But yeah, like that. There's nothing like that instant feedback you get from stand up because it's there in the room right there and then. So 5 years ago you started comedy. What brought that on?
So it was 6 years ago. I did raw comedy. I'd never done stand-up before. I wanted to do it once. I never thought I would do it again. I had two friends who I realised as I was about to turn 50, and I realised I had a friend who died when I was 13, and then I had another one who died not long before I turned 50, and she was only 37. And I thought, shit, I've had more than both of them put together.
Oh,
And
wow.
what the fuck am I doing? Like, am I doing it? Am I just squandering time? So I thought, look, I'll give this a go. I've always thought that it's something I want to do. I just want to prove to myself once, and I don't know if I'm funny, but I can be well prepared. So that was
which is a skill not all comedians have.
No.
Comedians, most, especially guys that start younger, they know they can be funny, but they don't know if they can be prepared.
Yeah.
It's sort of the opposite.
And they don't know if they can be funny outside that immediate audience who are really trained in what their humour is. That sort of, they're not dinner party humour guys, but that's what I call it. That it's like you can make 8 people around a table laugh when you've all had the whole evening together. And you basically you're 8 versions of the same person in that situation. So you're all going to think the same things are funny. But anyway, so I did that and it was okay. Like I achieved exactly what I wanted to out of it, which was to get up there, to not choke, to remember my stuff, get a couple of laughs.
Yep.
And so I went off stage. I forgot to go backstage. Tom Cashman was the MC, and I was the first one on that night. You know how, like at the store, they go, you go on, you come back through the curtains. So I went on through the curtains. I was so relieved when it was done. There used to be two steps down into the audience. I just went down into the audience like I was Oprah Winfrey. And it wasn't until about 2 acts later they went, oh, that's right, I meant to go backstage afterwards.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I went and sat with some friends and got pissed instead. And then I just didn't think about it for about 11 months, and then I saw Raw advertised again, and I went, oh, I'm going to give it another go. And I woke up the morning after that and went, all right, I'm in. Let's do it. Yeah. So that was so it's 5 years, but I had 5 minutes the year before that too.
Yeah, I think it's a funny transition period when you first start with 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like, and then it becomes a thing of like, okay, like you either, and there's people that never do. Like there's guys that I think are doing open mics that I've bumped into that have been doing open mics sort of once a month for years and never wanted to try and tip over to get it to treat it more seriously than that, which is, you know, is one approach. But then there is that most people who end up really dipping into it have that first period where you're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I like this. Do I want to risk the actual emotional pain of having to
What's
invest
a scary
myself
thing
in
to
this?
declare too, isn't it? To tell people, I reckon I'm funny and I reckon I can do this. And so to give yourself that kind of, oh, I'm not sure, just going to give it a go, you protect yourself a bit emotionally too.
That's an interesting thing. It isn't a scary thing to declare because, especially like I feel like I started older. I was looking back, I was 27.
Oh, so old.
Yeah, I know. I know, but I felt like I was older.
Well, you were.
Because
you were.
You know, I'd done a bunch of stuff. I had kids. I was married, or I had a kid and another one soon to be on the way. And that
had
was
a whole different career. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it was a weird thing to all of a sudden declare. Whereas, like, so I'm thinking now, doing that at 50, where you've had a career in PR, you've been quite successful from what I can gather. How was that? Were you like, because okay, I'll tell you my experience. When I first decided to try it, there was 2 mates. So it was my wife and 2 mates knew I was doing it.
Yeah.
And my wife was not coming. I wasn't going to let her come. I had no interest in inviting her. Not that we had an infant anyway, so it wasn't really an option for most of it. But those first few gigs, I was similar to you. I was thinking like, this is going to be a bit of a buck. I just wanted to see if I can do it. I just want to see if I can do it. And then but there was 2 mates that I told, and so we went along to comedy together and explored it all. But they were basically sworn to secrecy because I'm like, if this doesn't go well, I don't want that out in the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So how was it for you? Because I'm thinking at 50, that. And I don't want to say this, but that does reek of midlife crisis.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I could have had the boobs, but instead I did comedy. Yeah.
Yeah, which I don't know what's more expensive in the end, but and self-esteem wise, total opposite directions. Let's be honest.
Well, one doesn't give you the back problems though. I think if you go too hard on the big tits, you get back problems.
Yeah,
so.
you do.
I don't know. Apparently,
you do a lot of tours, like, a lot of standing up. You know, you're gonna need to pull the stool up at some stage.
I had 10 friends in the audience, and I went with Raw because I had no idea how open mics worked or anything. But I just thought, well, you show up and you may or may not get on the night. And I thought I need to have some cushioning in the audience. I need to have some people there, but I'm not going to say on Facebook, oh, I'm going to do stand-up comedy or anything. So I had I had 10 friends. Trusted friends. And it's like, look, however this goes, I want these people there so we can talk about it afterwards. But and Raw is great because it's like, this is your night. This is how long you're getting. You're guaranteed to get on. And so like, it was good. And I had them in the audience, but like you sort of then put a bit of a cone of silence around it.
But the other thing with Raw, in terms of getting people to come along to see you do it, is it's set like it's a real comedy night. Like, you're in the Comedy Store, like there's an MC, there's like everything's there's wait staff that'll bring drinks out.
There's over 100 people in the audience. It's not just 4 comedians in the audience.
Yeah, you're not in the corner of a pub where there's noises and distractions. So going from Raw, how was the adjustment then into actual open micing?
So I did Raw again the next year, and then after that I thought, well, I should probably find out what I'm doing here. So I went and did a course, and
you did a course?
Yeah, I did a course.
You do everything properly, don't you?
Oh, well, I did it all in the wrong order. So you only get 3 shots at Raw. I did my first 10 minutes ever were at Raw. So so that.
So 2 different 5s year on year.
Yep. And my first year, it was fine. It was a 5 minute. It's totally wrong for stand up. Like, you need a laugh within the first 12 seconds for a 5 minute one or whatever. I did a story. It was entertaining and it had a big payoff at the end, but just wrong for 5 minutes. So the second year, I'd sort of worked out a bit more that you need to that's not how it goes. And then I did the course and then went, oh yeah, well fuck, this would have been good to know 2 years ago. But anyway, so I did a course then. And then at the end of
Which course did you do?
It was School of Hard Knock Knocks, and Marty Bright was our teacher, facilitator, guru. Yeah. So.
Oh man, that's so funny. It's so like I mean, it makes perfect sense, but it's just so funny to hear because I remember, well, I started similar time to Marty Bright, so I remember him.
Yeah.
being the person wanting the information, not giving it.
He was so great in that role, and there and there's a few people. So Kritika Harale, who's now gone down to Melbourne and is doing very well. She's down. She was on that course. Anyway, there are a number of us there who are still in touch. But he did a great job at helping us understand the structure of comedy. And then at the end of that week, we put on a show, and it was at the Foresters. And then of course it's all family and friends. So once again, it's a packed house. So it's like, oh shit, this is easy, isn't it? Like every time I stand up on stage, there's going to be 100 people thinking that I'm fantastic. And then I was a bit cocky. I'd been on Hard Quiz 3 years before, and as a contestant.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
And Nick Gleeson is in Orange, so that's Tom's brother, and my parents-in-law live in Orange, and he was running a campaign there to get people to vote for Tom. If Tom wins the Gold Logie, he's going to come and do a comedy show in Orange. So I wrote to Nick and said, I'm a comedian and I was on Hard Quiz. Can I help? And so Tom gave me 5 minutes at the start of that show. So again, very early on in my career.
Who was that with?
It was Tom Gleeson and Justin Hamilton.
And so you're right at the start of your career playing
and I'm
the two
doing
big
5
hitters.
minutes, and that's right. And then and Justin Hamilton gave me some really great advice that night about some stuff that I was not doing right. Like he said, every time you make them laugh, you break eye contact, you look down at the ground. So stop doing that. And it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. It would have taken me years to work that out.
Hamo's good like that. He's got he's always like very generous with sharing stuff he knows.
Yeah, and also very polite. He didn't offer it. He waited until I asked, and I said, "Got any tips?" And he said, "Yeah." So
he's good like that. So because you've struck me as someone who there's a bit about you that you go about things like not unorthodox way, but in a way that like you haven't approached your entry into comedy in the way most open micers do, where they find out what the system is and just go through the system. Whereas you've come at it from a point of view, well, what works for me? What will I do? What can I?
And I think that's having had a long corporate career before it, is that it's sort of like, okay, well, how do I do this? What is the system? And I didn't really understand the system, and so I didn't go through a lot of the open mic paths.
Well, I think too that, like, just from my perspective, I think the system as such as it is was probably 5 years ago, especially. It was in a bit of a state of flux, right? In terms of it's very much changed from when I started 14 years ago to now. The way you got on and the way you started, there wasn't sign up open mics. That just didn't exist.
What was it?
So you go along, so there was regular nights. So like my first night was at the Mic in Hand, but there was a proper MC, paid MC, a paid headliner, and then there was a mix of acts at different levels doing spots, working on stuff or whatever. So you always, that was generally the format of a lot of nights. Like there was Comedy on the Rocks, which was a competition that you could go in, but that also had a headliner and an MC. And the headliner,
so the audience is they're guaranteed a quality product that might have a few beginner bits in there.
And always then, and even with the Comedy on the Rocks, where it was a competition, one half was a competition, one half was a headliner. That headliner would be on first, and then the comedy competition. Right. So you saw headliners. Whereas, you couldn't just sign up on the night. It wasn't like you could just go any given night. Spots were hard to get, and so you really, Like there was much more of going along, being around, getting on, getting when you could. You didn't say no to gigs as much.
Yeah.
Because it was spot. The only time you could go down and sign up, there was Comedy on the Edge used to run a workshop before their regular Tuesday night show, which was basically just an open mic. But then once again, it was a MC. There was an MC. Sometimes there'd be someone there to close.
Yeah.
But it was, and that was like a Tuesday night new material night. But then you could do the workshop beforehand where you go down with your new material. If you turned up, you could get up, but it was all just comedians in the audience. You get, I think it was 4 minutes, and then a couple of minutes of feedback from the other comedians where they could go, have you thought of this? Throw a tag at you. And look, mixed reviews on that. Some of the advice you get from the other open micers that were there was garbage, but sometimes you get good advice or good little notes, so it was take it or leave it. But you always got, if you turned up every week with new stuff, that was the only thing you had to just have new stuff that you're working on. You turn up every week, you were guaranteed to stand in front of a room of people and just get it out there.
Yeah.
But that was the only real sign up on the night thing. And then, Mug and Kettle came along, and then that whole model sort of changed a whole lot. And the popularity of stand up, like as a thing to do, seems to have grown in that time. I don't know if that's because I'm in the world, or
so it feels bigger to you, or
but there just seems to be more people doing it now than when I started, at least.
Yeah, see, I have no idea how it works, and I guess because when I started, I was an outsider because I was too old to be a beginner and too little experience to be the age that I was. So it was sort of like, okay, I kind of don't fit anywhere, so I just have to find my own way through this.
It's so funny because that's exactly how I felt, but I was 20.
You were 27, yeah.
But that is also the thing. Like it is a mix of people, like from different perspectives. But that's why it's interesting to see the way you've gone about things, in like just doing that sort of stuff, putting yourself, can I do this, asking. Whereas I wouldn't have thought to have done that when I started. And I think that, I was very conscious of the fact that I had, when I started, I had a young family, and a lot of guys that started around the same time as me would, did the festival model was still a way. So they'd go do the festivals every year. And I just worked out, like, I'm not going to be able to justify.
For a month,
that was my thing. I'm not going to be able to justify doing that every year, especially early on when you got to lose money. And I kept saying, I'll just try and find a way to make this work for me, which is watching the way you do it seems to be very effective. You're very good at making it work for how you want to do it.
Look, it's no way to buy a house in Sydney, that's for sure. But it's having, because I had a long corporate career beforehand, I've got a little bit a bit of cushioning there and whatever. But it's also like, I know I'm not going to be. This is not my. Okay, I'm now building a massive career as a comedian. It's like I'm doing this because I love doing it. So I'm only going to do the things that I love doing, which is good. It actually, so that first gig in Orange, that's the first time I got paid, and I wasn't expecting to, but Nick said, he slipped me $50 afterwards and said, thank you very much. And driving home, so I got so drunk that night, and I stayed at my parents-in-law's house, and the next day I drove back to Sydney. And on the way, I clearly should not have been driving, but on the way home, it's like I have to vomit. I mounted the curb, and I was driving a Land Rover. I mounted the curb, burst 2 tires, which cost like $600 each. So that was a
all for your $50.
Yeah, all for my $50. Yeah, that's right.
And to pop the tires on a Land Rover.
I know, I couldn't change them. It's like I'm physically not strong enough to change that, so I had to wait for like Land Rover people.
That's not like popping the tires on a Hyundai Getz.
No,
either. That's like they're designed to go a little bit off road. I mean, probably not the way you drive.
No,
but
I had to get off there. I had to park really quickly.
Oh, that's funny.
It was just open the door and head out.
Yeah, lose money to make money.
Yeah,
and then lose money to hopefully one day.
What have we learnt from this? Don't drive yourself. Yeah.
Oh man, so let's talk about the PR career, because I don't know your story too much about, other than I know you worked in PR. I know you had some time in rugby.
Yep.
Because we've talked sport, but so you grew up in Brisbane?
I grew up in Brisbane.
Yeah.
And then I left Brisbane when I was about 24. I went to Canberra to do a PhD at the Defence Academy. Yeah, I know, it's stupid, isn't
Okay,
it?
so no. Before we get there, so you go through school. What's the plan at the end of school? What are you thinking you're going to do?
Journalist. Thought I'd be a journalist.
Yep.
Didn't get the marks to get into that at uni. Missed by sort of one bracket. And so I ended up I did a business degree, and then I changed into Japanese, which I'd done at school. So this is the late 80s in Queensland, and it's like, well, the only way you're going to get a job, there's a recession coming, the only way you're going to have a job is working for the Japanese, who are clearly going to take us over. So
I remember the late 80s when there was a lot of Japanese investment. I was particularly on the Gold Coast. So Queensland was just terrified that they were just going to buy everything.
Terrified, but also excited because the money was coming. So that's a real balance there. So for the powers that be in Queensland at the time.
See, when I was in high school, we all were made to learn. Well, the fashion became Indonesian.
Right. Yeah.
So Bahasa Indonesia. Yeah. I had to learn that, and that was the bit. I remember our deputy principal telling us, like, he'd do some of the classes, and I remember him telling us, they're our closest neighbour. We're going to be integrated. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, Indonesia's going to...
Have you heard Beck Melrose joke about this? Like, at her school, they didn't learn Latin. They had Indonesian because they knew what side of the courtroom those students were going to end up on.
Yes, similar sort of approach, I think, at my school. But so you learnt Japanese at school, and you switched to Japanese at uni.
Did a degree in Japanese language and politics, and then finished that in it was whenever it was in Keating's recession we had to have. So I went and lived in Japan for
89ish.
Yeah, 91.
Or 91.
Yeah, so not a lot of jobs for arts grads. Probably quite rightly. Let's be honest. Well, I've finally made my way into the one career I'm qualified for. But so I went and lived in Japan to sort of dial up my Japanese skills.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Whereabouts in Japan?
Just outside Kobe. So between Osaka and Kobe.
Oh, nice. And so what were you doing in Japan?
Well, I worked for a recruitment consultant over there, and I was they worked with Japanese companies that foreign-based companies that had offices in Japan. So they wanted Japanese staff who could speak English. So my job was to interview people in English and give them a mark in that. And it was so boring.
Introduce them to salaryman culture.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, now you got to go drinking with us.
So I did that, but that then meant when I came back to Australia, I did have some skills that I could then get into the proper short skirt and high heel workforce. So
yeah, nice. Business world.
Business world, yeah.
Nice.
That's right.
How's your Japanese now?
Oh, very poor now. It's a shame. I let a lot of it go. It's not, so the Japanese, this strident young feminist from Australia, the Japanese culture, not that great. I was working for a Japanese company when I came back, and the guys were smoking at their desks there. Like it's so wild to think of that. That's been in my career time, but it's like I wasn't allowed to wear trousers. It was all the women had to wear skirts, and if you wore trousers, it was only as part of a pantsuit, and so it just didn't sit right. So I didn't stay long in there, and then I got into a job in this recruitment firm. And the Japanese I've barely used since. And then I was back there in 2019 with my family for the World Cup. And it's really interesting. It's sort of like you walk into a room and it's completely empty, and then suddenly you go, oh, there's a door. And it's like you unlock something and you go through that door, and then there's unlocking something else. So it's there's still a lot of it back there somewhere. But yeah, I lost a lot of it.
Well, if you're not, it's like anything. If you're not using it all the time, it just gets stored in a different part of the brain. Yeah. So you come back. Why the PhD? What's the PhD about?
Oh, so I did when I was at uni doing the Japanese language and politics. I did an honours degree, and I did a thesis on the ANZUS Alliance, and I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed international relations. So I thought I would go back and do some more study, get a PhD. And the guy who I worked with, my honours supervisor in Brisbane, suggested I go to the Defence Academy as a civilian. So it's part of the University of New South Wales.
Yep.
So I went down there, and then I was working with a guy who was a PhD supervisor who said to me, I wanted to do more on the ANZUS Alliance. I like that whole Australia-US relationship. And he said, no, military aid in Papua New Guinea. And I went, oh, well, that must be the right thing to do then, because, you're the professor and I'm not. And so I started that. And so I have no interest in military aid to Papua New Guinea.
We're going through this at the moment with the kids doing subject selections. just trying to there's no point trying to learn something you're not interested in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially at PhD level, because you need to get right into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. And like I was 24 years old. I couldn't go and do field work in PNG. You know, it just wouldn't have been safe. So anyway, it inevitably sort of fell apart. At the same time, I met this guy who was in the army, and then spent the next sort of 10 years moving around the country with him.
Oh wow! So he's officer in the army.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
No. But it was good. So we moved from there down to Melbourne, then up 3 years in Darwin, which was fantastic.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
well, actually, the first year I hated, the second year I loved, the third year I liked, but I was ready to go. But
so what was it? What was it the first year you hated? Just not knowing people.
Oh, just so hot. It's so hot. And up there, so the military moved a whole lot of stuff up there in response to a defence white paper, and this was the first wave. So it was like all these people came into town, and there was no, there wasn't yet.
It wasn't
really
set up for them.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah. So, and I was, mid-20s. A lot of friends had babies and things. I wasn't there. So we went. Red Rooster opened. That was exciting. A Target store came.
The Rooster
Red
was
Rooster
calling.
came. Yeah, but so I went there the first night it opened in the drive-through. Had to sit in the car for an hour. It was fine. The car's air conditioned. Got up to the front, and it's, hi, welcome to Big Rooster. May I take your order, please? We have everything on the menu except chicken. What? They didn't have any chicken for their opening night, but they had the corn, and they had, I don't know, whatever the hell else they have. Yeah.
Or had they run out of chicken by that stage?
No, they had no chicken
They just
all
didn't have
night. They had
chicken.
chips, they had corn, so whatever, give me some chips and corn,
So
I guess. Yeah.
So when my oldest son was, he must have been about 6 or 7, there was a Red Rooster not too far from where we lived, and we used to drive past it pretty regularly, and it was like he's oh, I want to try that one time, and then this night his brother was in hospital, and Nat was with him, my wife was with him, and so it was just me and the older one, and I'm like, you know what, Friday night after you've had a big week, I said, well, let's go, I'll take you to Red. He's so excited. All right, what do you want? He goes, fish and chips. What are you doing, mate? What are you doing? Lunatic.
My first time my son saw it, he was about 5. We were at Brisbane Airport flying back, and same sort of thing. I've got to feed this kid. And he came back and he was telling my husband and his 2 older sisters, had red turkey for dinner.
Red turkey.
It's great. But I can't remember when it changed from Big Rooster to Red Rooster, but I'm pretty sure it was Big Rooster in the mid-90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And Darwin, and they didn't have any
Who
roosters.
said this isn't a history podcast?
Certainly not. So moving around then, so obviously the military move around finishes.
Yep.
And then...
Well, no, he kept going for him. It's just I said, I'm getting off this particular relationship train.
What were you doing working? Like, were you working?
So going to the
NT
was a big break for me, actually. So I got a job up there. I met a guy who was the Chief of Staff to the Minister for Asian Relations, Trade and Industry. And they wanted, I met this guy at a function. I was working in the private sector. I had a background in Asian studies. So they offered me a job. This was with the Country Liberal Party government. And it was like, there was no freedom of information legislation. It wasn't corrupt, but man, it was skating close to the wind with some of our expenses and things. So it was, fly first class around Southeast Asia. Fantastic.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was great.
God.
So I did that, and then
I paid my taxes.
Sorry.
Glad I paid my taxes.
Yeah, up there, like an elected representative, they have an electorate. A state member or the equivalent territory member has an electorate about the size of your local council ward councillor has.
In terms of
number
people.
of people.
Yeah.
It's insane.
But some of them are big areas to get that number.
Yeah,
that's crazy. I met one of their members at a barramundi fishing tournament up there. He's a lovely bloke. He was really nice. But he was telling me, like, every Christmas he just sort of goes off grid for like a week. He has to take because he's in the ministry, so he goes, he has to take the satellite phone. So he goes, once a day I put the
let it ping.
Put the Skynet up to check if I'm needed, and then just go back off grid. He goes, I don't really tell them where I am. I give them a rough area.
Great job for a politician if you want to be.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So so you're working there, and then you decide you're jumping off the military bandwagon.
No. Then we went to Victoria, and I worked for the Kennett government for a bit, and then.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Bloody Jeff Kennett.
Bloody Jeff Kennett. Well, I worked for Rob Knowles, who was his minister for aged care, health and aged care, and Rob was awesome. Like he could have he would have been a good minister in any government, Labor, Liberal, whatever. And then we lost government, and I moved to Canberra with my ex's job, and I got a job. I had 6 months working for Bromwell Bishop.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that was insane. Yeah. So
did you do the hair as well?
no, I didn't.
You should have gone there. Should have gone the beehive.
Wouldn't. There were some other questionable styles that I embraced there. But after about 6 months in that, I thought I don't want to be involved in this anymore, and that's when I got the job as the sponsorship manager at the Brumbies down there.
Nice.
Yeah, great.
So
Greatest job ever.
Did you had you always followed rugby? Because growing up in Queensland, obviously league's probably dominant, but rugby, especially 80s, early 90s, rugby was more of a going concern.
I was born in New Zealand too, so
okay.
so you get the whole All Blacks in your blood. But so I was going to Ballymore. I was there when I don't know, was it the last time we won the Bledisloe Cup? Like in the late 80s, early 90s there. Yeah. So I used to go to a lot of rugby and the whole private school shit up in Brisbane too. So I liked rugby. I wasn't like a mega fan, but I was a fan. But really enjoyed. It was a great job at the right time. It was. I came in, and 6 months later, the Brumbies were the first non-New Zealand team to win the Super Rugby trophy. So it was great.
I was going to say,
I don't think there was a causal link there. It probably wasn't.
Well,
my work.
good sponsorships.
But that's right. That's good.
The guys were like, finally, we've got the right sponsors. Let's get out there and win this.
Let's get that weight off our shoulders now. We can get out and win the trophy. Yeah, but it was a really good time for the Brumbies in Canberra at that time.
Oh, that's fantastic. So what does that entail? What sponsorship manager? Like, talk to me like I'm a dumb comedian.
Yep.
What does that actually do? You just keeping the sponsors happy, finding the is that sort of the...
essentially, and just trying to work it to budget too. So if you are a sponsor and you give me $100, I want to have $70 of that I don't have to spend on you. So $30 is on your signage, on your hospitality. So on player appearances, how do we value those going along to your client events and things that you can't sponsor them for $100, but for the sake of the
argument.
For the sake of the argument, So it's about managing that into how can we extract the greatest value out of that sponsorship while having them feel like they're getting great value out of it, because they're not going to come back the next year if they don't feel like they're getting good value out of it. So it's sort of a... There were spreadsheets, which I don't really like, but I managed to do. So, but a lot of it is just making sure that they're having a good time at the game. So they got everything they need, and are their guests having a good time?
Which means you've got to go along to the game.
I've never drunk so much in my life. Like it was disgraceful actually. I'd sort of go from corporate box to corporate box. Carolyn, would you like a drink? Of course I'd like a drink. That would be rude of me not to. But then instead of going, I'll just sip it and pour it away, or I'll have a soft drink every third box or whatever. It's like, so it was not, I wasn't a beacon of professionalism, but it was the right job for that attitude.
But for that, that attitude, that's kind of the right. You need that person who wants to be part of the fun. So, and is that getting like ex-players as well, like helping the former players? Oh, you're going to schmooze this. Is there a certain is there an art to? Because I've always thought about this, like the players they pick to do that hospitality afterwards, but then also is I feel like there's some players that some sponsors would gel with more than others. Is there an art to that?
Yeah, there is, and there are some of these. They're young men, and they're good at football.
Name names. Who are the lunatics? Or who did you find was, or you didn't expect to be really good at the schmoozing?
So Justin Harrison was excellent at it, but you would expect that he would be excellent at it. There are a whole range of these guys who, by the time I got there, they'd had quite a lot of experience in it. But it was still, I was still older than them, asking to do something, and I now realise they didn't understand what I was doing. They just knew that I was there asking them to do something that they felt uncomfortable doing. No one likes to go to these things and have to mingle and whatever. So I now realise if I'd sort of taken a step back and helped them understand, this is what people want out of you, it would have been. But instead, I'm dealing with sort of, Beavis and Butthead to the power of three. They sort of club together because they're a bit people.
Well, they're also used to, the team, it's interesting with the guys like that, the team sports guys, is they're very used to being around each other very used to being around the group. Like I remember talking to James, the professor who I used to work with at Fox, and when he was producing Fletch and Hindy early days, he said it always fascinated him that they'd go, if they were away somewhere, they get 3 separate hotel rooms, and he said as soon as I wanted to find them, I'd just go to one of their hotel rooms, and both of them would be in there. They'd just be sitting on the bed together. Like they so used to just being around each other that they like company and they like.
And I think they're also one another's audience too. And I don't mean in a performative sense the way we do it, but that it's like they know everything I say, they're going to take the piss out of. So I need to make sure that I can't look too cool, or I can't look too enthusiastic. I can't look too stupid. So, well, actually, maybe it seemed to be more like, well, if I look stupid, then I'm kind of protected a little bit. So that drove me insane. It's like, just come on, pull it together.
But it is. I mean, I think it's like like you said, if you take that step back and think about where they've come into this from. Their experience is completely different and their approach. And like you said, if they don't understand why they're there or what they're actually the expectation is, then it's hard.
Yeah, and they're given a lot of money for that, particularly at that age group. They've had smoke blown up their ass for years, and they've never done anything else other than this thing that they're really good at, and that they're heroes in that environment. Of course, they don't bloody know anything else. So I just, I sort of.
And also, there's a box feeding into that is the reason they're going into those boxes to schmooze. Is because these people who are older and have money. Want to hear from you. Yeah. It's like it's a weird, it's an unnatural dynamic.
It is.
I think in the rest of society. But I mean, hey, good work if you can get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So my favourite parts of the job were not dealing with the players. I think because of those sorts of dynamics. But yeah, it was great.
Just drinking with the clients. So
and just like, Canberra's still a relatively small town. This was a massive thing for rugby in Australia, and it was happening in Canberra with this club that had been born out of just misfits some 10 years. So it was great to be just at the guts of that. It was really exciting.
What year are we talking?
2001.
So who are we talking? We talking
Bregan Larkham, Joe Roff, Sterling Mortlock, Bill Young. Yeah,
half the Wallabies.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
when the Wallabies were good, that's half that Wallabies sort of. Well, just that's quite a few of the Wallabies World Cup.
Yes.
Side.
Yeah. So, and then in 2003 that they.
That still breaks my heart. Still breaks my heart.
But it was between 99 and 2003 when we won it, and then we came so close to winning it. And so these guys were the absolute, top of the.
And that's sort of, I think, looking back on it, like it doesn't feel that long ago to me, but that's been a long break.
It's been a long time since we've won anything of any note. Good. Yeah.
Because that generation of Wallaby they were world class.
Yeah.
And so and for them to be all just sitting down there and
in this small town where they were quite accessible. Yeah, so that was cool.
Yeah. So when did that what caused that one to finish?
That's when my marriage ended in 2003. I said this is it, and I thought, well, I've lived in Brisbane, Melbourne, Canberra, Darwin. I'll go to Sydney, and so that's when I moved to Sydney. So I left my job with the Brumbies, moved up to Canberra, and got a job with Coca-Cola Amatil. Which was great. And a year there.
I love how you talk about this like, so I just went there, got a job. Like that's sort of like underselling how hard those jobs are to get, like in terms of, but is that all mobility around once you're in that sort of world, like around building those networks and connections and having a good reputation, and then so when a job comes up, you can go.
Yeah, in part. So all of those jobs I got, I saw advertised and had to apply for. So it wasn't just sort of like, oh, she's looking for work and employ her. But, you know the language. You know how to take what your experience is and translate that into something that is helpful for them. So this job with Coca-Cola Amatil. So Amatil's the local bottler. It's the Australian company. And then there's the Coca-Cola company that owns the brands. And Amatil felt like they weren't identified as a local company anymore, that no one knew they were a big employer. So my job was, you've got 1 year, reconnect the bottlers with the local communities. And by the way, there's no budget. So I was sort of able to, I got that job because I said to them, well, I'm used to working on the smell of an oily rag, and I'm used to trying to understand what this person wants and work out how that person can help them and in return. So, you know.
And if you want someone who knows bottles, I've been drinking with the Brumbies fans for years.
Different shape bottles mostly. But yeah, but so that was then I'd go, all right, the New South Wales, Coke New South Wales is sponsor of the show. Give me some show tickets. And then I'm going to talk to Barnett's charity about taking some kids to the show. And then we're going to raise some money over here through, you know, some lunchtime activity so they can have some show bags and some buses, you know, and then, all right, we've got product. I'm going to give product over here to, I worked with the Macquarie Bank Sports Foundation. And then, because I knew Liz Ellis was running these all-girls sports camps around country New South Wales. And I said, if we give you product for that, can we be associated with that? And so that was then, you know, that was how, and I now do a podcast with Liz and Kath, who I met through that process. So it was just sort of a matter of going, I don't know, I've got no money to spend, but there's stuff. We've got assets, and how do we use them to sort of meet this end?
Oh, wow. So now, so you say, like, so you do comedy, writing, podcasts, and then sometimes a bit of PR stuff.
Yeah.
Is that consulting or freelance, or how do you do that?
Yeah, mostly sort of, consulting or freelance work. And one of my main clients is a guy who I was working for at the Brumbies all those years ago, because it's like he knows what I can do. So it's like, can you come in? Can you write this for us? Mostly just writing type stuff and sort of thinking about what type of external facing comms they need. And great.
You do know the lingo.
Oh yeah, external facing comms.
It's funny. Yeah. I've recently just been doing a little work with guys that run a PR company, just a few little things, and it is interesting when you get on the Zooms, because I hosted a couple of events for them and that sort of stuff, and when you get on the Zooms, just hearing all these terms, and when I first was on the Zooms, on the fly. Or you go to a brainstorm with them and they said, oh, we're just looking for some bit of out of the box ideas for stuff. And then, you know, the brains, no, and then you hear the lingo that they all know. But then after a little while, it's sort of, I suppose it's like a language immersion. You start to go, I think that means this. Yeah. You pick up on what it means.
Just wanky jargon though, isn't it? It's like,
every job's got its shorthand, but and from the outside it does sound like wanky jargon. But then if you tried to have those conversations without using the wanky jargon, it just gets way too
takes long.
So let's talk about the pod. So you started the comedy.
Yep.
And you decided to move away a bit from the PR thing, or did you just? And then when did the podcast and let's talk about this novel as well. So what started first? So the novel was...
Oh, the novel I've been writing for years, and then it came out last year to...
What's it called?
It's called We Only Want What's Best, and it's sort of... It had a brief life in the sun and has now, you know, gone. So unfortunately, it was put out on the same day. I publish as a firm, quite a small publisher, but they had one really big title of last year, and it was the biggest fiction title in Australia, called The Bookbinder of Jericho. It was their Harry Potter, and for reasons unknown, they put my book out on the same day. So it was sort of like...
You realise timing is so much to do with everything.
Yeah.
Like there's so many factors in anything becoming successful that you just, and it is literally, timing is one of these things where you just, you know, and the things you've got no control over. So what's the novel about?
So it's a thriller. It's set on a plane between Sydney and LA, and it's a group of young dancers, sort of 14, 15, and then someone finds a USB of nude images of one of the girls, and it's not clear whether, like, are these images art, or is this a kid in danger and a kid being abused? So the woman who finds the USB has got the duration of the flight to try to work this out, and
so just light,
absolutely,
So you felt like, I'm not getting enough laughs on stage, let's try writing a book.
Yeah, well, and it's stupid, because it's like, okay, in a marketing we'll talk about how you're a comedian. It's like, okay, this is not a funny book though. This is about child sexual abuse. So and that's an interesting learning too, because it's like, well, you know, who am I? What am I doing? You know, you kind of have to.
But I think, and I don't know, I'm interested in this, in your perspective on this, having worked in public relations and that, because it's much, marketing and public relations seems to me, from an outsider's perspective, someone who's not very good at any of it, is it's about categorizing. It's easier to do if you categorize.
Yep.
So if things fit like have a brand or whatever they say now, but reality is, in terms of creativity, most of us are much more multifaceted than that.
Yeah.
And most of us at heart want to be multifaceted. Do you think that, like, are you partly glad that, you're not, because you don't go, I'm just a comedian, that because you're not viewing yourself like that, that you're able to go, you know what, I'm going to put out a book that's completely different to this? Like, do you think that's in some ways, like if you just went it from a marketing point of view, and would you advise yourself, Carolyn, pick a lane, as opposed to looking at it from a creative point of view of like, get whatever creativity out however you want, like in terms of...
From a marketing perspective, I think it really helps to be coherent. And I think that there's a certain, I mean, from a creative perspective and fulfillment perspective, I think that that's not necessarily as fulfilling to do that. But from a marketing perspective, I think it would help to go, you're a comedian who writes funny books, who has a funny podcast, or, rather than you're a comedian who writes books about sexual abuse of children, and how do we market this and how do we sell it? And so, but again, it depends what you're hoping to achieve. And, I'm nearly 55 years old. It's like, at this stage, I'm not going, well, I'm Dave Hughes. It's like, well, Dave Hughes has been Dave Hughes for a very long time, although we're about the same age, so it's like I'm doing things that it's like, well, what do I want to do to satisfy myself that I've had a crack at the things that I want to do? But from a marketing perspective, yeah, I think definitely being coherent. And I think from me with comedy, I started to enjoy it and get a whole lot better at it once I understood what my voice was. So my very first set, I was taking the piss out of bank CEOs' salaries. And, I'm a middle-class white woman from Sydney's lower North Shore. I should be leaning into this and saying that the banks are getting CEOs are getting underpaid or something. So as soon as I started to kind of grab that and go, I need to be talking about shit that makes sense with this.
But it's also, I think it's a funnier angle because the obvious angle is to be like, these people are earning crazy money.
Yeah.
It's the obvious angle to try and... That I think in a lot of ways is harder to make funny. That's not as funny as constructing an argument that a on surface coherent argument that they're being underpaid.
Yeah.
And trying to be like, this is one of the things I like about the way you approach your comedy is like, one, you say it makes sense for how you present on stage, but also you're zigging when everyone else is zagging. Like that's what makes it more fun in my mind.
And it's the only way. So I have a disadvantage in that I am older. So how do I turn that into an advantage? And it's like, well, the only way then is to talk about, to lean into the stereotypes of, I'm Gen X, I'm not a boomer, but that whole kind of, well, we've got all the wealth and we're completely clueless. So
it's funny, the definition of boomer has stretched out so far now. Because the actual boomers are pretty old now. Like they're not...
Yeah. Well, they were born 1945 to 1964, I think, isn't it? So
I don't think it even goes that... Like technically, when the original definition of there was a baby boom post World War II, I think it was like a 5 to 6 year period. They were talking, like, if you go back to what the sociologists were talking about when they originally coined the phrase.
Yeah. Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Because it's like everyone's come back from war...
Yeah,
to get back in the sack and have some babies.
Well, it was like, okay, everyone's away, and then you have this glut of people who come back, and now they can settle down, get on with the business of having families. Yeah. Which, in those days, that was very much the linear path that, most people were on. So but that now boomer is like, okay, boomer.
It's really anyone you don't like, isn't
it?
Yeah, isn't it? Who's older than you.
Anyone who's got a house.
Yeah.
But that's so how long did that take to work that out, like in terms of your comedic voice?
It wasn't long. So I did that very first set where I sort of tried to denigrate the salaries. Then the next set I started to, which was a year later, I started to pick up on little bits of it. But then it was when I was doing that course with Marty, and he then started asking those questions. And it's like, well, look at yourself. Who are you? What are you? What's different about you? And so, okay, this is an advantage rather than a disadvantage, or it's both. But so it wasn't long, but I think it's taken me a while to understand how to bring other threads and how to use that to kind of start a setup, but then liberate myself a bit from it in the back end of a set. So I'm not just really locked into that character, because that's a bit tedious too.
I think what you're talking about there is making, if the character is somewhat authentic to what you are, if it's more just a heightened version of you and your perspective, then that's a much more fun place to play rather than you're going down into a character, and seeing a world from a very constructed perspective rather than, okay, how do I think about this now? How do I express that through this voice?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you do the same sort of thing, don't you? You know, we lean into the whole we're parents, and so there are certain things that we can talk about that a lot of comedians can't, and so that's sort of, you know, I'm now, my son at 16 is allowed to hear my comedy. My daughter's not, because it's like, well, I don't think you're yet ready to separate on stage mum versus actual mum's thoughts. So,
so when your son's, has your son actually seen you live?
Yeah.
Okay, how did that go? Were you, because I'll tell you, my 16-year-old's seen me 3 times.
Right.
And none of them were good.
Oh no, really? So Lewis has been to 2 solo shows that I've done.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, and I don't think he's seen me in a sort of standard stand-up environment where there's a bunch of other comedians, although I have taken him to shows with people who I like and we watch. But so the first thing he saw was a solo show that I did, and then he just saw another one last week. So.
Oh wow! So my son's never seen me do a solo show, but he's seen me once at a seniors gala.
Yeah.
Because it was on a Tuesday at 11 a.m. and they had a pupil-free day.
Comedy.
Oh, and it was coming straight out of COVID, so it was like Sydney Town Hall. So it looks great, but it was like I think a third capacity. Everyone's wearing masks. Like it just wasn't. You're not set up to succeed.
And daytime comedy's just, and that's a huge.
See, I don't mind those gigs, but that I've done those since, and they're very much different. But this was a particularly difficult one. I just remember just feeling the cold sweat of my back, knowing that they're at the side of the stage. And then the second time was at last year's NRL Grand Final. I did stand up at one of the corporate functions.
Yeah, great.
And that's just like, it went as well as it can go. But that's just not, like I said to him, like people are eating. There's not like it's.
They're there for a social thing. They may or may not listen. Right?
So and they like it was fine, but it was just just not.
Yeah.
Not what you'd go. It's not where you're putting yourself in the best position for your son to think you're funny. And then the last time it was actually just about a year ago. I was doing gigs with Jim Owen.
Yep.
And my son plays guitar, and he'd been, because Jim Owen was flying back and forth for the gigs, I'd bring his guitar home. And so Oscar, my son, would tune the guitar for him before every gig.
Nice. Yep.
So he just happened to be this night. His brother had something on that his mum was taking him to, and he was either going to be home alone, or I said to him, "Why don't if you want, come and check the show out. You can just sit side of stage." So I got the magic moment where we got there first, and I said, "Come on, we've got to do sound check. You can plug the guitar and you can play for sound check." So he's playing, then Jim Owen came in, he's like, "Oh," and met Oscar, and then he's getting Oscar to play stuff while he sings through the microphone. So I got this beautiful video of them on stage.
How cool.
It was a beautiful moment. So then he sits side of stage, and for some reason that gig, I went out and the audience were just hard work. And I was like, this is, and all I could just feel.
My son's here.
He's
Can
right
you pricks
there.
laugh?
And then it was tough. And then I went down, and sometimes, because when you open for people, sometimes the audience don't know you're going to be there.
Yeah.
So sometimes they're just not that interested in you or whatever. Yeah. I went down, and Joanne goes, "How was that?" And I said, "Oh, look, mate, I found them a bit tough, but I think they're just, they're probably just Jim Owen fans and waiting for you." He goes, "No worries." He gets off stage and he goes, "That was hard work."
Oh, okay.
Right. And it's like, he goes, "That was really hard work." I couldn't believe that. And then I said, "Oh, mate, I couldn't believe that the one time Oscar comes to see me, this has happened again." And he goes, Jim goes, "Oh my God, Oscar." And as he's saying that, Oscar comes down back into the green room, from the side of stage. He walks in and Jim Owen just turns to him and goes, "Oscar, you have to understand, your dad and I are usually much better than that." It's like, thank God Jim Owen said it. I didn't have to, but it was like. But then we went out. Like there were some people in the audience that Jim Owen knew, so we went out and said hi to them, and all the people in the audience were like, "Oh, that was amazing! Everyone loved it."
Interesting, isn't it?
Well, it's but I think that I've done a few at that particular venue. I'm not going to name which one it was, but sometimes I think that it's hard for the laughter to get to the stage or something, because I've had that where at other shows there that I've done with other comedians, and we've all been like, it feels like there's a disconnection.
Do you listen to all your sets afterwards?
No. No, I I record all of them. I'll listen to some of them back.
Yeah.
It depending what I want from that set. So if I do a corporate that goes well, or I do a corporate I've got a similar corporate coming up, I'll look at the notes on the set I did, and then I'll listen back to go, okay, this worked, maybe this or that, that sounded like it might have been a bit too far or whatever. So then I use it for that purpose. I don't listen back to all of them, because otherwise I just get too much in my own head. Also, if I hear my own jokes too many times, then I lose why they're funny. And
I record them all, and I will usually, if I've had one where I feel like I just didn't connect with the audience, I will listen to it. And it's interesting. Usually, you connect better than you're thinking in the moment, because it's not riotous laughter. So you're feeling like, okay, this isn't going great, and then you listen and you go, well, okay, they were laughing quite a lot. It was just, it didn't carry me the way I love it.
That's the thing. Sometimes you're looking to feed energy off them, and if they're not putting out a heap of energy, then you can feel like it's not going as well as it is. Yeah. Also, the big trap, I think, that you can, and it took me ages to work out, like you do a show where you didn't think it went well, but you got friends or someone in the audience, and they'd be like, "Oh, that was great," and you're like, "Oh, you kidding?" No. That instinct to try and talk them out of their good time, like they don't know it didn't go how you thought it was going to go.
That's right.
Don't talk them out of their good time.
No, that's
they had
right.
fun.
Yeah.
That's all you need to worry about. So, stand-up podcasts. The podcast. Talk to me about the podcast.
So No Dribble. So it's I do this podcast with Liz Ellis and Kath Cox, who've both been captains of the Australian Diamonds netball team.
Yeah. So the three of you, three ex-captains.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
3 genuine 6-footers too. Yeah.
And that, that's the whole basis of it. 2 world champions and their short comedian mate get together, and it's netball adjacent. So we talk about netball every week, but we talk about a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And it's growing. It's really good. We've only been doing it for about sort of 3 or 4 months now, but we have good, really engaged audiences, a big Facebook group. We're doing our first live event in a couple of weeks, and it's really fun because we've been friends for a long time, since I got that job at Coca-Cola Amatil and basically stalked them so I could use the organisation to help me develop those friendships. But it wasn't until Kath and I just had lunch in December of last year, and we're just kind of talking about stuff, and I suggested, do you want to do a podcast? And we got Liz in. Great timing to get Liz in, because quite soon after we'd started, she got onto the board of Netball Australia, and then immediately became the chair of Netball Australia, which constrains her a little bit. It didn't take us long to work out where's that fence, and but I think had we not started it before she started that job, it just might have been too hard. Can't do it at the moment.
It's harder to start something when you're in those jobs and continue something when you're in those jobs. Yeah.
And we just said to her, you just show up. We'll do all the work each week. You show up and be you. And for a period of time, that's exactly all she did, and that got her through that time when she was really starting this role and needing to find her feet. And so that's good.
She's so good on
exactly. She's such good. Yeah, that's right.
Good talker anyway. Yeah. So
and the fans, our dribblers, they bloody love us. So it's like
so that's called No Dribble.
Yeah.
So podcast, stand up, novels.
Yep.
This is because we are getting the time. I've been asking everyone. So if in the next 5 years everything breaks your way, like in terms of growth in the areas you want to grow, and you get to do the projects you want to work on, what does that look like? What's your combination of work looks like? Are you still doing a bit of PR? Is it stand up more, or are you leaning more into the podcast, or you got another novel on the go? What are we doing?
Yes. All of the above. No, so probably. So I'm really enjoying the podcast, and I think it's got enormous potential, and it's it's something, it's so easy for us to do because we're mates and we enjoy doing it together. And it gives me a voice that is different to the one that's in stand up. So I really I love doing stand up. I don't like doing it 5 nights a week. I like doing it. I'm about a once every 5 days is the real sweet spot for me. I get to really enjoy it. I enjoy watching the rest of the show. I'm not rushing off. I'm not going, look, I've just deserted the kids and my husband for the whole week or whatever. So I like that, but don't see myself. I can't go to Melbourne for a month and do a month of shows. It's like, it's just, it's not fair on anyone in the family. So I really like the podcast to continue to grow. I'm writing another novel, and we'll continue with the stand-up. So I don't know whether I'm answering the question or not. Dream job, I'd love to do radio. I love radio. I've done a lot of radio, and that's. I think that it's a natural combination of all the skills that I have and interests that I have too. So that's where I'd like to go.
Yeah, nice.
I wish, I guess it'd be A to B C, given my age and.
I don't know. Maybe,
it's not going to be Triple J. That's.
Yeah, you and I should get a Triple J show.
Nice.
Like it is.
Sometime in the middle of the afternoon, telling it like it is.
Like it is. Mate, before we go, plug anything else you want to plug, anything you got coming up you want to plug, the live show.
Thank you. I've just done the live show. I just did a week at the Sydney Fringe, which was great. Sold out every night except 3 tickets on one night.
Oh my
so
God.
annoying. I know, but I just like to.
I need your advice on selling tickets.
Well, that I can give. That's about the only thing I can give you advice on in this career. But so No Dribble, the netball podcast is a lot of fun, even if people are not enjoying, if they're not super netball fans. It's a great sport.
Great name.
Thank you.
By the way,
Thank
that
you.
is a fantastic name.
That was from Keely Devery, former Australian diamond, who said netballers do it without dribbling, and so we went, okay, well we'll pinch that. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
But, thank you.
Excellent, mate. Thank you very much for doing this. Oh, socials. Plug your socials.
Oh yes, I've got the worst social handle ever. It's at Puffy C, PUFFYCEE, because I got it right in the beginning when Twitter was just starting and I didn't understand it. But if you do read my novel on Kindle, which is about the only place you can get it, We Only Want What's Blessed, please give it a rating on Amazon, because once it gets over 50 star ratings, then they start to recommend it. I've been sitting at 36 forever. So please give it a good star rating.
Mate, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks.